Yes, we can get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your lunch hour to come and have an informal dialogue. We are the Informal Multistakeholder Sounding Board. My name is Jennifer Chung. I'm one of the co-conveners of this sounding board. Oh, thank you, Eleanor. So we just really wanted to get a sense of where we are, what we do, and how we can help with the process. And especially would like to hear feedback also from member states, delegations, other stakeholders on how we can continue to be helpful in this process and really maximize what we can do in this role. So next slide, please. Thank you so much. Just a really quick, very simple agenda just to give us the background of how we came to be, a little bit of an overview of our activities to date, including the consultations, engagement, with different stakeholders, the inputs to the process so far, our observations on revision 1, mainly taken from all the engagements and input we've heard from very diverse stakeholders, next steps, and hopefully a nice informal dialogue with all of you on any questions, answers, and maybe we have some questions that we would like to ask as well. So with that, I think I can turn over to Teresa.
As Jen noted, we are a pilot group from the MAG and from the leadership panel. There are 10 of us that have been appointed, and the group itself can be seen on the website. We come from all stakeholder groups and from all regions of the world, and welcome from that standpoint. So the IMSB, as you may be aware, was established in July 2025. We had a quick kickoff start, including convening ourselves quickly and trying to figure out exactly how we needed to work and what we needed to do. The formation was following a public posting for nominations. And as I mentioned, it brings together the non-governmental members, and the selection basis was from the MAG, IGF, and from the leadership panel. All of us serve in our personal capacities, so I am definitely not here with my ICANN hat today, by example. With that, we take our responsibilities very seriously to really try to bring together some of the different stakeholder views that are coming and provide that as input. So we take that role quite seriously. We were selected with attention to regional balance, gender parity, and stakeholder diversity. We operate on the principles of independence, transparency, and informality, and really focusing on evidence-based input while respecting political sensitivities of the intergovernmental process. And we're very cognizant that the UN process and the processes in New York are long-standing existing processes. And so with that, we very much welcome the efforts being made to provide stakeholder input and figure out ways to do that while still using existing processes as part of that. And with that, we don't underestimate that the role is very important from that perspective, but does need to respect also the existing intergovernmental processes around that, and have worked closely with the co-facilitators with that regard in the Secretariat. If we can just go to the next one, thanks. This may feel a little bit repetitive, but again, it's an informal mechanism. It does not preclude the stakeholder input that is direct. And so you'll see consolidated views in the materials provided by the IMSB. But if you want to see the specific stakeholder groups, it's best to go to those submissions themselves. We are seeking to assist the co-facilitators informally. We've had the opportunity to have informal conversations with them, and we're looking at consolidated feedback from civil society, technical communities, academia, private sector, youth, and relevant non-governmental actors around that. We've synthesized contributions around this and focused very much on the inclusivity elements across all regions and unrepresented voices, very much looking to engage in all different forums, and with the Global South, making sure that we look at holding office hours, having conversations, sitting in different sessions, so we really have an opportunity to fully understand voices and views that may not always come through stakeholder input, but do afford the opportunity for the sounding board itself to sit in and listen and hear in order to really take the bullet for the promoting inclusivity of the dialogues across all regions that we would like to have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen to focus in on some of the other areas, and then we'll go into a conversation.
Sure. Maybe just a quick overview of what we've done so far. I think Teresa has mentioned we were convened quite quickly and we were sat in July. So from July until now, it's not very long, but it seems like a long time. We've done quite a lot of listening, observing, being part of a lot of the consultations that are both official, that's led by, of course, the ambassadors themselves, as well as a lot of community-led consultations, inputs, and webinars. We've been also doing very regular meetings. We've been doing weekly meetings and communications because I think for the sounding board itself, we stand ready to react as quickly as we can and to be as helpful as we can throughout the entire process. We've done a few blogs on the dedicated website. I think that Yondessa has helped us put as part of the Business Plus 20 process review. There is a separate page on the IMSB, and we have those blogged out. We also leverage existing meetings, including inviting the co-facilitators in the meeting that happened just last month in Dublin. So on the sidelines of the ICANN annual meeting, we've also invited them to speak at different regional IGFs. So the NRI network also have been leveraging a lot of this. The regional meetings as well, I think APT had meetings on this and other regions as well. So we tried our very best to leverage existing meetings so we can actually reach out further into the communities, into the stakeholders that are very, very both plugged into the WSIS process or should be plugged into the WSIS process and really need to be heard more clearly. If we can go to the next slide. And Teresa, jump in
I will anytime.
At any time if I'm missing anything. So we've done some formal inputs. We did an input to the elements paper. I think on the very week we were sat in July, we thought, oh, okay, we have to react immediately because actually the elements paper came out before we were announced. So we had to react immediately to that. We also did an input to zero draft. And yesterday we sent in our input to revision 1. Of course, after listening to the 14th of November consultations from all the stakeholders, as well as we hosted 4 different office hours in different time zones. I think we did one time zone that was very friendly to the APAC region, the other time zone that allowed for other regions to also participate. So we actually heard a lot of feedback, particularly on that, because I think a lot of stakeholders really are interested in the WSIS process. They have questions, they have inputs that are very important, but they feel a little hesitant in actually registering for a very formal consultative process with the 3-minute interventions. But they feel a lot more comfortable if there is a venue or an avenue or office hours for them to actually come to the IMSB and say things they would like to say, and we can convey that into our reflections to the co-facilitators and into the process. It also helps that Yondessa, of course the Secretariat, also there to answer any logistical questions they might have, particularly on participation going towards, I guess, the high-level meeting in the middle of December. We also did a lot of engagements, both virtual and in person. I guess at the beginning, Teresa mentioned we all serve in our individual capacities, but of course, being part of different stakeholder groups, being part of different regions, we also leverage our connections with our network, with our communities to be able to take this even further. I think there was quite a lot of engagement done in the APAC region, both virtual and on the ground. There was a lot of engagement done in the Africa region. I think there was stakeholder consultations held. And also in the LAC region, the GRU-LAC region, they leveraged the existing LAC IGF to do additional consultations with the stakeholders there. So I think each and every one of us in the IMSB has tried our best to leverage all of that available to us to expand this call for input, to expand listening to all of the inputs that we can. I think that is really the overview so far. I think maybe Teresa, if you wanted to add a little bit more on that. If not, we can head over to the observations we have.
I think we have one more slide. Oh, you already spoke to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Oh, perfect. So I think what we wanted to do actually is look at just some of our observations around Rev 1 more generally, and some areas where we had seen a strong reflection of consensus from the stakeholder groups that we've heard from, and this is also reflected in our submission. Clearly, closing the digital divide is fundamentally important, and from what we've seen over the past 20 years, there has been a bridging of the digital divide. There's more work to be undertaken, and there's a lot of language in different sections of Rev 1, both in the specific section, but also areas around those sections that afford the opportunities to continue closing that. So that's a big priority, and it's something we've certainly heard from in all the different dialogues, as probably you have as well. The other theme is avoiding fragmentation. On the architectural level, obviously that's key, otherwise we wouldn't be where we are today. But also in looking at regulatory and policy discussions, and not just within the internet space, but maybe in other forums, ensuring that one avoids fragmentation around that to afford the opportunities. And so we know that there's text in there that addresses that and reinforce that. The recognition of human rights is a fundamental part as well, and that's reflected in the document and also in our input that had been provided. But from the stakeholder areas, we're hearing a lot of alignment around that itself. The importance of a multi-stakeholder engagement and the recognition of stakeholders, and I pull those out. One is the recognition of the stakeholders in the document, but also the continuous references in the document about engaging with multi-stakeholders on issues in order to address solutions and find solutions towards different action lines in different areas is a theme that we certainly have heard reinforced from all stakeholders, and appreciated what's in the document. There's a lot of discussion around financial mechanisms. Again, alignment around input there. We've provided some thoughts and suggestions. And then avoiding duplication. Resources are limited, bandwidth is limited. Looking at avoiding any duplications of institutions or of work areas in order to ensure that we can be as efficient and effective as possible. And in that, in Rev 1, there are some discussions around, task force or new mechanisms, whatever. Part of that is looking at, are there ways to avoid duplication? Are there existing systems or existing mechanisms that could be utilized or repurposed around that? And then just to add one other aspect in relation to digital divide, there are several references in the document around the importance of one's ability to use one's language online. As one can in the offline world. And that is, of course, an important aspect to achieving any of the action lines, the ability for people to engage in their languages in order to achieve many of the other aspects. So that's where we're hearing a lot of alignment. I think just as governments, we also have the same challenge of there's a wide range of views on some areas where there may not be alignment. So from an IMSB standpoint, again, we try to bring forward the best way of where there is the best solutions or the best alignment there, and then individual stakeholder groups obviously have provided their input. So I hope that's helpful for this conversation. Is Jen, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just to, I guess, cannot overemphasize the last point that Teresa brought in. The IMSB ourselves, we make sure that we are as truthful, as reflective as all of the stakeholder input as we can hear. We absolutely don't internally try to advocate for one position over the other, because I think the value of having such a sounding board is to be able to see the heat map, to be able to see the convergences and divergences. And again, when there are big divergences, to point to the specific stakeholder inputs, I think that would be the most value we can play in this whole process. I think you've covered pretty much a lot of the observations we have on revision 1. I will say that our actual input will probably be published as soon as the Secretariat gets a little bit of a moment, and you'll be able to see that on the IMSB webpage, part of the business website. So I think maybe we can turn to the next slide now. We're probably running through really quickly, and we're looking at next steps. So we did hear very positive feedback on the office hours, as I already stressed earlier, because it's low pressure from stakeholders who are interested, who wanted to talk to us and ask questions. We will continue to provide input and consolidate all of that into the process. We have been strongly advised or strongly hinted that we should be also facilitating and supporting the consultation once revision 2 is out. So this is looking at, I guess, sometime early December. So we also have to react quite quickly to be able to organize that and also give the community enough notice so they actually know that something is happening. I think that's a lot of questions we are getting also during the office hours about that. And then finally, we would like to know from member states, from delegations, from everybody in this room and also online, how we can also serve to help with the negotiations or with the entire process. I think we have definitely a mandate to support bringing in all of the stakeholder inputs. And I think a lot of you in your delegations, in capital, in your national context, in your regional context, also do your own consultations and stakeholder inputs as well. So we also stand ready to see how we can assist with this whole process. And I think all of us know that, you know, we are kind of an innovation here. The IMSB is one of, I guess, the first kinds of groups like this to be in this process. So we are learning as we go. We take in all the feedback to be able to improve how we can be of best value in this whole process. So I think with that, perhaps we can go to any questions and answers. I think that's the last slide we have.
We have several IMSB members who are online as well. I just for awareness. We just realized that it would be easier to have the people in the room talking as opposed to. Are there any questions or anything?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Hendrik from the Philippine delegation, and also one of the coordinators for Group 77 in China. So thank you for having this briefing. First of all, really appreciate this exchange. We really, I think it'd be useful to receive your inputs, like as soon as possible. Actually, like now or today, because we're negotiating. We've been negotiating in the room, and we're putting all the proposals in. And I think we might end today, but most likely Monday. So actually, this would be the last train for the Rev 1, I think, because after this, so it might be hard to input specific proposals after Monday. So that gives us today in the afternoon and Monday. I mean, I think to do it in a timely manner. So that's one, if you could share your inputs already.
Absolutely.
We're not necessarily on the website, but if you can already share with us, I think we'd all profit. So that's the first point. And second, the G77 China really put a lot of importance to some of the points you flagged of convergence, first of all, closing digital divides, and financial mechanisms. So I just wanted to ask specifically what were your ideas and feedback on the Rev 1 on these two particular topics? And if you have concrete suggestions, because for the developing countries, we really need, we'd like WSIS Plus 22 contribute to closing the digital divides and also providing the means of implementation financial mechanisms in order to do that. So we feel that these two are some of the key aspects of this review, and we're happy to see what the IMSB might want to see more of in the text. And maybe we could also do a bilateral at some point today or whatever.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm going to start attempting to answer the first question. So the very first question, I'm looking towards Secretariat to see if we can somehow circulate that even before it's published. I think that's perfectly great. And thank you for the reminder to be very timely with the inputs. The second part, we've heard from a lot of stakeholder input. Using the phrase closing the digital divide is actually a big recognition of the importance of it, and the strengthening of that language was very welcome in a lot of the stakeholder input that we've heard so far. We don't have anything very specific on that, but we do note for financial mechanisms, there has been some call from different stakeholder groups, from different stakeholder inputs about the task force. I know we haven't gone quite there yet, but there is concern. Obviously, the bigger, I guess, the overarching feeling is to avoid duplication. So where we can leverage existing mechanisms, where we can leverage existing parts of the WSIS framework and the WSIS architecture to be able to solve for the financial mechanisms, if there is a dedicated group that is looking at this. And again, narrowing the scope to the WSIS implementation instead of a much wider kind of concept of a digital transformation or digital development. I think that is some specific inputs that we have, I think, in the input that we have as text proposals. I don't know, Teresa, if you wanted to bring out some other things that we have also spoken about in our input.
Yeah, so in relation also to the bridging of the digital divide, there's, as we talked about earlier, there's elements that are contributors towards that specifically. So we have provided some proposed language around capacity building, and we'll make sure that that gets circulated specifically as well. As Jen had noted, on the financial mechanisms, also had provided some specific text proposals, but noting again, trying to avoid duplication. Let's see if there's other ways that we can look at this from that standpoint in order to deal with that. And then I'm just looking very quickly at our input, and we'll make sure that this gets moved forward. Some of the reinforcement areas of existing institutions such as the IGF, but more importantly on that national and regional forest. Those are from an opportunity to bridge the digital divide, fundamental to ensuring that issues that are relevant to different countries of the world, and in particular in relation to G77, Global South, rural areas, that those opportunities for issues that are coming up in those forests make it to the international conversations that are occurring. And so we've tried to highlight from the different parts of Rev 1 areas that are also contributors towards helping bridge that from a very pragmatic level. And so we have training, the knowledge, the expertise, subject matter expertise in all regions of the world, and we have national and regional groups as well. So I hope that helps, but we have some specific language and take near and dear that that's. I will offer up Jen. She's here until Monday. Unfortunately, I need to leave later tonight.
Yes. Hopefully that's helpful.
Any other questions or thoughts? Does anybody on the IMSB wish to speak up, or anybody on the phone? I see we have many participants, so in the team. I don't know if there's any hands up.
I can't really. Eleanor will let us know.
We have
Jimson, we see your hand. Please go ahead. Can you hear us?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Jimson, please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Greetings, distinguished delegates, IMSB members present, and all on the call, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jimson Olufuye, a member of the IMSB, and also to say +1 to the presentation of representatives there, and to also add a little point to responding to the question raised on how to close the digital divide, and also perhaps responding to the request for idea on the financial mechanisms. One thing we have observed is with respect to the need for effective follow-up. And that is why in our last submission, we did noted a number of points of agreement, and follow-up mechanism is one of it. We observe indeed that there are many strikes happening in various countries, especially in developing countries. And the challenge is harmonizing a lot of interagency efforts, which is very, very important. There are many agencies responsible for many WSIS action lines and targets, but there is need for them to work together. And that is why digital cooperation, multi-stakeholder engagement is very, very important. And as such, we made suggestion that indeed a follow-up should be annual, and that will give us the opportunity, afford all stakeholders to do a review, consistent review, instead of just regular, maybe any other time that may be convenient, but annual, just like we have the IDF, the successful IDF and NRR all over the world. So there is need to use that platform to bring all stakeholders together, do a proper review, to calibrating progress and making correction towards 2030 expectation, even for ICT to help achieve the sustainable development goals. And also in particular, saying that we should avoid duplication. To be a great thing, because we have NRR, that is the National Regional IGF, already well established, and using that framework to project the WSIS objectives, which is for a people-centered, inclusive, and development-oriented information society that benefits all. So there are a lot of resources, even within countries, and we hope that could be tapped a lot through harmonization, through cooperation, and then also enabling the environment, which is very important. So encouraging the need for enabling environment, and that is well emphasized. So we thank you for the opportunity of this conversation, this dialogue, and we hope as we approach Rev 2, we can continue to improve on the value we provide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimson. I see another hand. Amrita, she's also part of the IMSB. Amrita, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you to everyone who has come to at least attend the IMSB's discussion, though all of you are very busy. Just to add to the digital divide, what we've heard from the community is the emphasis which even Rev 1 had on local languages. Multilingual internet is important because not the whole of the world does not speak English. Also the intergenerational aspect which was brought in, for example, inclusion of the youth, focus on women and girls is important, and that reiteration should be there. Also building the capacity of the developing countries, both in all aspects, as well as artificial intelligence is important, and I think those emphasis should be there so that we could have at least an equitable balance of all nations in the next, in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Any other questions or comments or advice that you'd like to give us?
Thank you. My name is Daphne. I'm negotiating on behalf of the EU and its member states, based here in New York at the EU delegation. So just thank you very much to you and all the members of the IMSB. We're very happy that this group was able to be gathered, and thank you for all your work. We know it's been intense, and you all have a lot of responsibilities aside of that. We do believe this is essential work. We are ourselves in contact with different stakeholders, but of course it's very difficult to capture all the voices and be in touch with everyone. So we do think you have an important role. You are having an important role in this process. So thank you very much for that, and we'll be very happy to look at any more specific language proposals that you may have to send our way. And maybe expanding a little bit beyond this, so I was wondering if you already have some lessons or reflections on the setup of such a a consultative group, and if that is something we should try to replicate further in other UN processes as a good practice.
It's a good question. I think part of it goes back also to the governments if they're finding that there's a value and a help and a use. Certainly from lessons learned, and this is just, we haven't consulted within the IMSB itself on this more specifically, though I think it's good that we do a lessons learned afterwards from the mandate. It does seem like there is a value and a benefit in consultations that are bridging both subject matter expertise and stakeholder interests that are global to help provide input into areas that might be very diverse on subject areas or very subject specific. So just from own observations and having observed UN processes over time, I think that there is a value to consider some sort of mechanism or some sort of pilot, whatever it might be. But again, the question goes back to the benefits that have been shown to stakeholders themselves and also the value to the governments or people who are in co-facilitating roles from that. So we would welcome any input to what can be done better, how we can do it better. Certainly the turnaround process is one that we want to make sure that we are looking at, especially going into Rev 2, and looking at how we can do that more quickly. I think we share many of the same experiences governments do of trying to turn something around quickly and do that. But if we can provide a value-added input into governmental discussions that are trying to negotiate on the governmental side to help bring in some more stakeholder aspects, I think that there is a value in the future.
I see Jimson's hand, but before I go to Jimson, I think absolutely the IMSB will need to do kind of a lesson learned at the end of the process. We're still doing the doing right now, which is quite intense. I'm sure it's very intense for all of you right now these few days as well. One more thing that I think I cannot emphasize enough is that the ambassadors and co-facilitators of this process have been absolutely open to everything that we've been saying. It's been really an eye-opening experience, and I think I haven't been part of many UN processes, but this has been extremely open, and they've been leaning on us in different ways that they've needed to. So we're happy to be the experiment. We hope we are a successful experiment, and we hope we are able to kind of articulate and encapsulate all the lessons that we learned so that other mechanisms that are like us or similar to us can be also deployed in all of these mechanisms and processes. I see Jimson's hand. Jimson, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jane. It's just a question to the excellencies in the room. But before then, a brief comment, and that is really to note the progress that has been made by the United Nations with regard to bringing all stakeholders on board. It's a progress that is highly commendable, especially with the IMSB setup. Well, I could recall or reflect on the role to the WSIS 2003 and 2005, where during negotiations, stakeholders were observers in the room. I don't know what is the Excellency's disposition to enabling this act about 20 years ago to still happen, to deepen the progress that's been made, especially that the Net Mundial +10 is also approved as a good reference point to multi-stakeholder engagement. Will the delegation be disposed to stakeholders being observers, just as it was 20 years ago? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jimson, for adding that context as well. I think we actually might have some questions for all of you. If you are inclined to answer, I'm going to hand it to Teresa.
So I think we touched a little bit on what the IMSB can do to be useful, especially getting things in a more timely way. But one question, or maybe it's a two-part question. What could we do to be more useful and supportive, in particular to support the G77 and the Global South? So that would be one aspect. And then also, we are, as mentioned, being strongly encouraged or suggested to handle some of the consultations around L2. To support this for the December conversations, what would be most helpful around that to the governments and or to yourselves from that standpoint in order that we could support the process in the best way possible? There's been many other consultations I know, but for this, for Rev2, we will be holding consultations plus office hours. And so if there's anything that we could do in particular that is supportive, you don't have to answer it now, but if you have ideas and suggestions, or that can be supportive also to the co-facilitators and they may have views, then we would really be very open to hearing anything as part of our improvements. No immediate ideas, don't.
I suppose, not to answer a question with a question.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think we have observed just from the zero draft process was the sheer number of stakeholders that provided inputs onto the process and were on the website. So I wonder perhaps if you could talk a little bit about the level of engagement you're seeing in, and the level of interest, I suppose, in WSIS from across the global stakeholder community. And that may help us better, as governments, better understand how we can best deploy all of that interest and enthusiasm and motivation that appears to exist to support us in the negotiations.
Yeah, and maybe just a brief comment too on follow-up. I think Jimson made it. I think beyond WSIS plus 20, we should continue to work together in dialogue on how to implement what we agree upon and how to keep closing the divides. And, yeah, and just sharing information, because I think we shouldn't just leave this as a kind of a one-off and done that we see. I think that's maybe the weakness of how we've been doing our work, and we might want to set up a tighter coordination and follow-up mechanism so that some of the things we agree upon here can really be followed up systematically. And I mean, you mentioned existing resources for financial, but like if existing resources were enough, then why are we where we are? Right? Yeah, so
right.
I mean, in a way, we need to probably enhance existing resources and maybe even create new avenues.
Yes, and by existing resources, what I actually meant was existing mechanisms. Resourcing obviously is an important area that one has to look at, but mechanisms that can be leveraged or used so that we can actually get existing resources and use those. To both of your observations, and I think they tie in very strongly, the interest is very strong, and the interest is very strong across all the themes that the WSIS plus 20 is looking at. And the past 10 years or 20 years have really shown that the information society is the medium by which everybody is reliant on day-to-day lives. And so that has triggered a lot of interest in these discussions in particular. And then to the observation on, so what afterwards? Absolutely, there has to be a mechanism, or let me phrase it, on looking at the implementation and the tracking, hearing from different groups how that is working, how things are going forward. And again, there's mechanisms within the WSIS process already, and other ways that we can institutionalize that in a way to track things. By example, the IGF, could provide a report out to the General Assembly, which is one example of things that can be done, but there's other things that can be done and that we can leverage in different ways to really show that there's progress and work underway and report out. But those are just some thoughts.
I think just to bring up a really good point, and absolutely agree with everything that Teresa has been saying. I think existing mechanisms, existing networks that right now can be the very first step. If we then see, implementation and follow-up that there is still gaps to be filled, of course, then we can then react again. The community, we live the realities of all of these decisions that are being made here. And of course, we stand ready. And when I say we, I don't mean just the IMSB. I think I'm talking about the global community who are plugged into this and who will be impacted by this. So I think it's a really good suggestion that you have definitely raised. We can't just leave it as one and done, and we need to take it forward to actually implement in the national context and the regional context on the ground, especially those that are really grassroots. There is a comment from an IMSB member on the chat, and Hossam, I'm wondering if you wanted to speak up on that. I also do see one more hand up from Maria Fernanda. So maybe I'll take Maria's hand first, and then Hossam, you can let me know if you'd like to speak. Maria Fernanda, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jen. If I may add something from the business perspective, one concern that companies and development banks have been sharing with us is about creating new UN mandate task force for financing. There is openness to discuss financing, of course, but also there is concern about ensuring that such discussions remain open, multi-stakeholder, and grounded in existing practices. So one option, and this is a recommendation not as IMSB, precisely because we have not come to one view about this, but it's an important observation from these conversations is that the IGF could host these discussions in a dedicated track with clear line of reporting to the CSTD. So this would make the conversation genuinely multi-stakeholder and will avoid creating parallel structures. But as I said before, this is only the point of view from the business side, but I wanted to put it on the table for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Fernanda. And I'm going to see if Hossam is able to speak.
Hossam, can you speak?
I will try.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Excellency, for having this time get our reflection and the responses representing the community. I have just one recommendation, if possible. You can see very much that reflecting on behalf of the stakeholders is a great thing to do. It gives you a lot of information and will help in shaping up, hopefully, the new mandate. But also, we do believe that during the new mandate, having multi-stakeholder would support the activity.
So sorry, Hossam, to interrupt you. Could you raise your voice a little bit? Your audio is a little bit muffled.
Okay, 1 second, please.
You might have to yell into your phone. I'm very sorry. This is connection. This is connectivity.
Yeah.
Can you hear me better?
And yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Now, can you hear me better?
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
so
you
what
so
I'm
much,
saying
Hossam.
is, first, now is good?
Yes.
Okay. First, thank you very much, Excellencies, for this meeting. Second, we do believe that the IMSB has tried its best to bring in all the information from a lot of stakeholders from all over the world. And I think it was a valuable decision to have such an IMSB during the preparation for the new mandate. Now that we are approaching the time where the negotiation will end and there will be a new mandate for the WSIS, we do think that it would be a great thing to have a multi-stakeholder sounding board, multi-stakeholder advisory board that would continue with the follow-up of the implementation of the action line of the WSIS to support the the body moving forward, and to make sure that all stakeholders are benefiting from it, especially from the developing countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hussam, and thank you for beaming in from your lovely evening as well. I think we heard your audio very clear at the end there. Any other advice, comments, questions that you might have for us? I know we are a little bit over time now, but again, this is an important conversation. I wanted to make sure everybody gets a chance to discuss anything that they would like to ask as well.
We shall advise when we set up the Rev 2 dialogues and let everybody know. And also don't hesitate to reach out offline if there's anything that comes to mind. We have a fabulous secretariat support, or you, of course, can reach us directly. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, you've been watching.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's no you can also say no. Sorry, I wasn't sure how.